Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Feels so funky.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 1 of Cinematic for the People, a film review and discussion podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Alan Kerr. I'm joined by Andrew Craddock.
Hello there.
Today of recording is the 4th of May, Star Wars Day.
May the 4th be with you, Alan.
And the bulk of today's show is going to be reviewing and discussing Avengers Infinity War, the latest in the MCU Marvel Pantheon. Was number 19 is this now?
I think we're on number 19, yep.
So we'll talk about that a bit later on. We'll touch on some news, look at the latest Netflix releases that have come out, and maybe whatever else has taken our fancy over the past week or so. But first, we're going to talk about the film kind of generally without giving any major spoilers for as much as we can. It's going to be not a lot of conversation in that section, I don't imagine.
Yeah, pretty minimal.
But I mean, if you're listening to this and you've not seen the movie, what are you doing?
Yeah, go and see the movie.
See the movie.
I don't think anybody hasn't seen this movie yet.
So, just to set the ground, Andy, how much of what was your relationship with the Marvel films?
It's not a particularly strong relationship. I like the films fine, but I'm not. I wouldn't call myself like a Marvel fanboy or anything like that, or a comics guy in particular. But yeah, I like the movies quite a bit. I think I spoke to you about this last week, but I never really got into them until about Captain America, Thor. So I kind of missed the first couple. And really the Avengers is the first time I remember a really big Marvel release, that everybody was hyped for. And from then I think I was kind of sold. Yeah, I like them a lot. I tend to enjoy them. There's very few that I can think of that I didn't like at all, if any.
I think if you're saying you're not, I guess I would be considered a Marvel fanboy.
Probably more than me, yeah.
I remember the first time I went to see the first Iron Man, and probably like most people had no prior relationship to that character.
Yeah, I don't think many people really knew much about the character, except unless they were really into the comics.
Like I used to watch the animated Spider-Man show and the X-Men shows, and I loved them.
Sure.
And the Iron Man one just seemed like it was just rubbish in comparison.
Yeah, why are they bothering with this? And then look where they've gotten to, man.
I thought the suit looked stupid and just wasn't into it. But that movie, man, that changed things.
Sure, I don't actually know if I've seen the first Iron Man film.
What?
Like, I to this day, I think the only Iron Man film I've actually seen is the third one all the way through. I think I missed the first two, but kind of just caught up with what was happening when I watched the Avengers.
It's easy to do, yeah.
Which, I mean, they were originally very much designed to do that. I think you'd be hard pressed to catch up if you went to see Infinity War, I think. But, certainly when you ask about your relationship with Marvel's cinematic universe, I tend not to miss any of them now. I don't think I've missed one since, Avengers, in the cinema. I mean, they're spectacle, sort of big event movies, aren't they?
Absolutely. This one more so than any.
Yeah.
So, a kind of brief story synopsis. Thanos, the Mad Titan, who's been kind of teased since the very end of the first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
And then again at the second Avengers movie. And then again in Guardians of the Galaxy. We keep being told, for the last 10 years, he's the big bad guy. He's coming.
Yeah, he's the bad guy you guys better be afraid of.
And he wants to collect the 6 Infinity Stones, which are these all-powerful, kind of magical ornaments that exist in the galaxy.
Sure.
And if he gets a hold of them, he can control all time and space and reality and everything.
Yeah, the 6 glowing MacGuffins.
Yes.
Which is fine. It's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, whatever. He needs something to chase after.
Yeah.
And when he gets them, his motivation is that he wants to balance the universe. And in doing so, the way he's going to go about that is by indiscriminately murdering half of all life in the universe.
Yeah. So to him, balance means just half of life needs to cease to exist.
He has never sat on a seesaw, clearly.
I think as well, we can immediately start to pick holes in the logic there that once you get rid of half the people, it's not going to be too long until you feel like that half has started to outgrow itself again. So, spurious logic there, but it's kind of comic book logic. It makes sense. in what they're trying to do. You know, it's a very simple premise, and you can kind of catch up to it very quickly for a villain that we're being introduced to properly here for the first time.
And it's up to the Avengers and also the Guardians of the Galaxy to team up and stop them. So it takes place all over the world, all over the
Many
galaxy,
worlds,
many
yeah,
worlds,
yeah.
many times and spaces and realities.
Yep.
There's a lot going on. So overall, what was your thoughts on Avengers Infinity War?
Well, me personally, I loved this movie, and I don't say that with any irony at all. I thought this movie was fantastic. I've seen it a couple of times now, both times in IMAX.
I hear that's the way to see it.
Well,
Shot entirely in IMAX for the first time.
The first time that I saw it, I didn't even clock that it didn't do the letterboxing thing. I mean, the whole thing being shot in IMAX, so I think I appreciated it more just because I knew that the second time around. I was so invested in the film the first time around that I didn't notice all the kind of technical, like, wizardry as much. Yeah, man, I just thought, like, it was such an amazingly potent, I want to say, like, kind of payoff to a 10-year build-up. There's never really, I can't think of any other time where there's been that kind of, like, lengthy build-up of movies that kind of count as all the exposition to this grand conclusion.
Yeah.
The whole film kind of felt like a third act, and I guess that's got its pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it definitely played into its strengths, and I thoroughly liked it. What about yourself?
Yeah, same. I thought it was very, very good. It's not my favourite of the MCU so far, for some of the reasons that you mentioned there that we'll kind of touch on in a bit.
Sure.
But yeah, like, considering this movie is like 2 hours 40 long, it is the quickest, like, most well-paced action movie I have seen in a long time. It goes at such a clip. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen it 3 times now.
Oh, wow.
And every time it gets to the kind of the start of the kind of final battle, and I'm like, are we here already? Like,
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. The first time I saw it, I didn't look at my watch once, which is something that even if I'm enjoying a film, I quite often, just out of curiosity, will have a quick peek at my watch to see how far in are we, particularly for lengthy films like this. It got to the final, fade to black, and I thought, right, cool, that's us about halfway. That'll be us about 90 minutes in. And that was it. So it was like you say, I agree, it was one of the quickest 150 odd minutes, 150 minutes I have ever sat through. And the second time, just the same.
Yeah.
Like, again, like you say, I couldn't believe how quickly we got there, because obviously knowing now that we're getting to the end, I was like, how long have we been watching this movie?
Yeah.
Very, very quick. The pacing is unbelievably good. And
Like,
yeah.
you can't kind of overstate how much of an achievement that is for a film to be this long and have this much, like, weight behind it to pay off so many different characters and plot points and, tones from all the different films that are leading into it.
Yeah.
To manage all that and have it not feel bloated and not feel, long and not feel rushed, is incredible. Like, the Russo brothers, who previously did Civil War, and before that, The Winter Soldier, like, going into the Civil War, people said the same thing. Oh, there's too many heroes. You know, it's the third movie. How are they going to, like, make it still feel like a Captain America movie and still have all these new characters? And also, adapt the Civil War storyline from the comics in a satisfying way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because these movies have gone down kind of different story paths to the comics. A lot of that is to do with the rights of other character groups being tied up with other studios, and certain things just maybe not being sort of cinematic or being too weird and outlandish or too dark maybe in some instances. They certainly have handled the sort of their own story path really well, while still taking lots of interesting elements from the comics. The way that they have, like, structured all the different tones you were mentioning. One of the things that I think is really interesting about how they worked is they collaborated with a lot of the newer or more contemporary directors of the MCU. So when it came to Guardians, they consulted with James Gunn on a bunch of stuff. Apparently they consulted with Taika Waititi on Thor and on Ryan Coogler on Black Panther. I mean, imagine they were pretty much filming around the same time.
Yeah, like, I assume a lot of those other directors deserve a lot of credit for that as well.
I think tonally, and you're talking about tone, but not just the other directors deserving credit, just the fact that the Russo brothers had this sort of humility to go to these directors and say, you know, okay, this is our film, but, like, you know, we totally value what you've done with these characters and we want your help in trying to kind of put them into this larger environment.
Yeah, I don't know, verify this, but I think it was some YouTube video who were doing a review of it. They said that all the Guardians dialogue was written by James Gunn.
Oh wow, okay.
Which totally shows, like, for those sections, it feels like you're in a Guardians movie.
It does. I've heard people say it feels like you're watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or Volume 2.5. Absolutely. I didn't realise that. I know that he signed off on the song that they used.
Right.
That's
cool.
apparently going to be in the next Awesome Mix.
All right,
in
cool.
Volume 3. So it's on Peter Quill's Zune, for the next film. So
I forgot he had his in. That's funny.
yeah, he's upgraded from his Walkman to a Microsoft Zune. Remember those?
Nope. So let's talk about Thanos as a villain, because a long-standing complaint of the MCU has been that they don't give enough time to the villains. They don't develop them enough, and they're always quite weak, especially compared to, I was going to say DC, but really when people say DC, they just mean Batman.
Well, yeah, the Nolan Batman. Let's be honest.
I mean, specifically Batman's villains.
Being stronger.
Yeah.
You mean in terms of just the characters in general before they've even put them on a film, or?
Yeah, you go and play any of the Arkham games, and there's
sure.
like, like 50 Batman villains.
He's
and
got that kind of
all
gallery,
them.
the rogues gallery.
Yeah.
It's the same as Spider-Man. I think that's...
Spider-Man's the only one that kind of comes close with Marvel, but like, name as many Iron Man villains as you can,
Yeah, sure, I get you. I think you've got a point. Although I wondered, a lot of people do criticize the way they've handled the villains in the movies. I think it's a little bit over-exaggerated when everyone's like, oh, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a villain problem. Because there's been a lot of really good villains. I think they've sort of subverted your expectations a little bit with some of the movies. I really liked what who's the guy that directed Iron Man 3? Shane Black.
Shane Black, yeah.
I really liked what he did with the Mandarin character. A lot of real Marvel true fans, or whatever you want to call them, hated that twist in Iron Man
luckily
3.
me and you are on the same page. I love Iron Man 3.
Me too. I think it's a great action movie. And I don't know. I think there's definitely some villains that are stronger than others, but I don't know that the Marvel movies have a villain problem per se. I get what you mean though about like them not having the kind of recognizable lineup of villains that somebody like a Batman or Spider-Man have. And the rights to the Spider-Man villains seems like a complicated issue, so.
Dear. That Venom trailer. Anyway,
Thanos.
people are definitely saying this time, oh, this is, they've solved their villain problem, he's finally. However, I feel like since Spider-Man Homecoming, they've been saying that with Vulture, and then with Hela and Ragnarok.
And with Killmonger and Black Panther. Yeah. The kind of lazy bit of journalism that we tend to get is, this is the best comic book villain since Heath Ledger's the Joker, and it's like, in the same way that this is the best this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Empire Strikes Back. It's these two lines come up again and again and again. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a little bit lazy to kind of constantly say, well, this is the best comic book villain since Ledger's Joker.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how many villains are you going to keep saying that about?
Having said that, Thanos is very well served in this film, I think.
Yeah, having said that, Thanos is the best comic book villain since Heath Ledger's the Joker.
And before this movie came out, a lot of people were saying that it's basically a Thanos origin story. It's like it's a story, and it totally is. Like, he gets a lot of screen time, like maybe more than any of the individual heroes.
Yep. And I think it plays to the that's part of the movie's strength to me, is the amount of time devoted to Thanos, the little kind of tidbits of information about his past through either dialogue or through small flashback scenes. You feel like you've got a kind of emotional attachment to your villain for the first time, I think, in quite a while.
Or at least an emotional understanding of him. Like, I'd never fully felt sympathetic to him, but I understood why he was doing what he was doing, and believed that he believed he was doing the right thing.
Sure, I'll push back on that a little bit and say that I actually felt sympathetic to him, but not empathetic. I couldn't get on board with his plans, or whatever, but I sympathise with the sort of plight that his character seemed to have gone through, and certainly in his more emotional moments that we'll maybe get into later, I felt like they really played it well.
Yeah, and visually as well, like, that is some top-notch digital work.
Yeah, it looks like they've done a little bit more rendering than when they released the first trailer with him.
That's bound to happen.
He looked a little ropey in that, but I wonder if that's just because we weren't used to seeing him or whatever. But certainly in the film, I forgot I was watching a CGI character. It helps that he's an alien, so they can get you don't have that uncanny valley effect because you're not looking at a human being.
And I was surprised at how much of Josh Brolin's portrayal came through.
Yeah.
And like, it just does like facial expression and stuff. And
Do you know if they did a lot of mocap work on there? I don't know if he was on set or...
He was definitely on set in,
Yeah.
in the ping pong ball suit, yep.
on stilts, I imagine, or quite tall.
He had the same thing that James Spader had when he was Ultron, of like a kind of...
Oh, like a balloon above his
Yeah,
head.
like a
sort of
rig
idea.
it's like coming up his back with two little eyes for the...
So the characters were looking
yeah.
above his head.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So he was definitely on set. That makes sense, because
Yeah.
the way the characters play against him, it feels like they needed something to be there.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we're both in agreement then, like, pretty strong villain.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of kind of how it's his story more so than any of the heroes, how did you think all the individual Avengers were served in this movie? Did they all get the amount of screen time they should have? Did they choose the setups wisely of who was with who and who did what?
I think so. I think the wisest thing they did was not, or was resisting the temptation to throw them all into like one big battle for one big film. There's moments where certain characters will come together. There's moments where characters split off and veer away in different sort of little side quests. I think they handled it as well as anybody could have imagined for an ensemble cast of that size, just in terms of like the logistics of trying to get all these actors together.
Yeah.
Looking at that from like a real world perspective. I thought, I mean, if you want to get into it, the only complaint with that I had was both times I've watched it, I mean, I'm really sucked into the story, but then occasionally there's this little nagging sensation of, I haven't seen Spider-Man for like 40 minutes and I really want to find out how he's getting on. But then not long after that, we'll go back to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's not like a Star Wars final act where it's like a short minute or two of each thing cut, each, scenario interspliced with each other.
Yeah.
We're talking big chunks where they don't go back to a story for a while. They really let each sort of sequence play out. What do you think?
Like, that is definitely true, but there was never any point where I was like, I'm bored of the story I'm currently watching.
No, don't get me wrong. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm bored, I want to see what Spider-Man's up to. I was just literally like, I really liked the Spider-Man arc in this, or, the Iron Man arc. I wanted to know just what they were up to, and thought, that's weird for a film to like, ignore that strand for so long to concentrate on this other strand. It's pretty bold and
Absolutely,
daring.
yeah.
It worked for, when I say it's a complaint, it's like looking for something to complain about more than actually having a legitimate thing to complain about. It's like a tiny little thing. So. And
I think it worked as well because it made me, like, when I would jump back to Captain America, I'd be like, oh great, I had almost kind of forgotten that he had a storyline in this, or...
Oh, sure. So actually, I suppose it has that kind of positive impact where you get back to him and you get that nice pleasant surprise. Yeah.
That would be one of the only complaints I would have, is that, like, I'm a fan of Captain America. He's like my favorite.
Okay.
And he's not in it all that much.
He's not. We'll get into this maybe in spoilers as to why not. I think I've got a couple of ideas, but I mean, I think one of the guys I went to see it with, our mutual friend Lee, I think he was wearing a Captain America t-shirt, and he's a big Captain America fan. And I think the first thing he said when we were walking out was like, "Not enough Cap." I'm kind of not. I don't have a favorite character. I really like the Guardians though, and I think they got probably a lot more screen time than I was anticipating.
Yeah, especially Gamora.
Particularly, which is really important to the story, I guess.
Absolutely.
But I think Chris Pratt had previously said his appearance was essentially just a cameo in this film. So people had just taken him at his word, and I think he was throwing people off the scent quite well. So he's got a big role in the film.
I really liked the team ups they chose to do were ones that I would not have expected to like, and it's not ones that you would immediately think of.
Sure. Example.
Thor, Rocket, and Groot.
Thor, Rabbit, and Tree.
Yes, as a little trio who'll go off and do this fantastic little side story.
Sure.
Because the other ones, like, there's some, like, Cap and Black Widow and Falcon, they're going to be together. But out with that, like, Doctor Strange and Iron Man, fantastic team up.
Brilliant. And very, very much improved, Doctor Strange in this film compared to his solo film. I loved him in this film.
Not being burdened by having to explain it all. He could just go in and do cool magic.
He was so cool in it. He
he
played it so
good.
much cooler. It seemed he was sort of just like, I don't know, it Cumberbatch, I thought, seemed more free in the role, just to kind of embrace it.
He was
have
playing
fun with
it. He's playing it as someone who had been Doctor Strange for a while. You know?
Like he kind of lost the shackles of having to tell that origin story, I suppose. I would never have said this before, but after seeing Infinity War, I thought, I can't wait to see like the new phase where Doctor Strange has a more prominent role to play. In the hope that maybe he'll have a sort of leading role to play in that group of characters.
So any other negatives before we kind of move on?
Man, like I would really be struggling. I loved this film. Both times I've seen it, it's flown in, which, I mean, you would just expect a 2.5 hour, 2 hour 40. Say 2.5 hour movie to have some issues with, be it like just simple runtime issues where you're getting a little bored of something. None at all. It flew in. It was wonderful action sequences. I thought most of the comedy landed for me. Very dependent probably on the audience enjoying it as much. Yeah. The first time I saw it was like an opening night kind of thing. Audience were a lot more into it. Woo! A lot more, not so much, not so many whoopings and cheerings. It was just like everybody was really into the jokes. Second time I saw it, there was a little more of a subdued atmosphere, but I mean, that's not the film's fault, and I was laughing away on my own. I really don't have any major complaints that I can think of. It's one of those though, maybe when you revisit it without the grandeur of the IMAX, presentation. I mean, that presentation, it sells a movie to me so much more, especially something like this. So, no man, like, apart from what I've mentioned before, I just thought it was a great romp and thoroughly enjoyed it. What about you? Do you have any, like, kind of criticisms or, not concerns, but like,
something that I would say is one of its greatest strengths is also its greatest weakness in that, and I don't think it's too much a spoiler to say, going in, this is the first part of a two-parter, right?
Okay.
So it kind of has that second Pirates of the Caribbean, second Matrix movie thing of the film ends, not in an unsatisfying way, but like, you need to see the next one. And like, people always say that about all these movies, all the Marvel movies, because they are very serialized. They're like comic books, Yep. But this one in particular, it's like, the ending is so, too much into it.
The ending
ends
is
in such a way that you're like,
a massive cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people going into this have heard this sort of through the grapevine that, this is, you'll be surprised the way it ends. Mm-hmm. And going back to lazy journalism, although I really don't think this is so lazy, I think this is actually quite on point, is the ending has, quite a bit in common with the sort of the tone and the way that it sort of stops the plot, in the same way that The Empire Strikes Back does.
Yeah. Like, I in my own, Letterboxd review, I tried to avoid saying the
Empire Strikes Back. I did not.
Because you're right not to, because it's accurate.
Yeah. I think when you say the Marvel movies are serialized as well, like, you're right, but every single one of them up until now has had a beginning, middle, and an end. This felt like the end of like what we've had up until now. And for me, that was fine. But I can imagine some people being a little like, it might be a little exhausting. Did you not say that you felt you needed to have a lie down after you saw it?
The very first time, definitely, yeah, because, like you said earlier, it's kind of, the whole thing is a third act.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on. It's like so much to take in. It is exhausting.
Sure. Do you know what it kind of reminded me of a little bit? Just when you mentioned The Matrix, it came into my head, the sort of structure, the way Cloud Atlas was, where it was literally cut. It's maybe not quite.
Yeah.
Cloud Atlas had a bit more of a sort of schizophrenic sort of way to cut between things, where it was cutting when you weren't expecting it to cut to like very short snippets of stories. But just in terms of the way it moved around between these like kind of sometimes very disparate stories, I don't know. It came to mind a little bit in terms of, and that was another movie that I loved, but
me too. Yeah,
didn't get a great deal of critical praise.
This definitely lets the individual sections breathe more than Cloud Atlas does, and they're not as dependent on each other. Like Cloud Atlas is kind of cut, like the whole thing revolves around. It's not a sonnet, what is it? Is it a sonnet?
A sonata.
A piece of music called the Cloud Atlas Sextet. That's what it is.
Oh, that's right.
And the movie is kind of like structured like a kind of piece of music. Like there's the rises and falls and slow downs and speed ups and stuff.
Sure, it's actually very much like cut to the soundtrack.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But anyway, it's
just in terms of the way that you were talking about it being like a one big third act. I remember when I saw Cloud Atlas, it felt like it was one big third act, but because I didn't have 10 years of build up of other movies before it, I was like, wow, that's a really strange thing to do. With this felt like a satisfying kind of 2.5 hour finale. And then ends, and you're thinking, well, we've got another 2.5 hour
Yeah.
finale still to come, and I'm very excited about where that's going to go.
Yeah. I do love that this film doesn't, it doesn't pretend that, it doesn't cater to those who aren't initiated already. It's not like, well, we have to catch them up to speed. It's like, no, it's been 10 years, been 19 films. If you're in this, you should know what the setup is already, and just get straight into it, because it can't afford not to.
No, and I think that's the thing. If they had sort of taken studio notes saying you maybe need to acclimatise the audience, your first hour is going to be acclimatising the audience. There's so much. At the same time, I think if you are just looking for a bit of like not mindless, but if you're going into the cinema looking for sort of a popcorn movie, you're probably going to find that if you don't, if you're not going along with a lot of the kind of character arcs, if you're not really sure who they are, I think you're still going to find entertainment just because of the scale of the whole thing, and the lights and the explosions, just the sort of shallowest aspects of the film are so well done that, as you call, like, somebody who's maybe uninitiated or is unaware of like the previous movies, I think they're still going to find a lot to enjoy if you're going in with sort of no deeper knowledge of that whole universe.
Okay, so this is the point where we're going to start hard spoiler discussions. So I'll put in the show notes if you're trying to avoid this, when to skip forward to. But be warned, this is when it starts. So the ending.
Oh, we're going there already. Okay. That ending.
Well, you mentioned earlier on how it was shocking, and that is the word. It is legitimately shocking for a movie of this size and this kind of Disney franchise, ostensibly aimed at kids, to kill off not only like half your characters, but half the population of the universe.
Half the universe, yeah. I think it was unexpected when I first saw it, and it kind of still seemed to like strike me quite a bit the second time. It still affected me. I thought, this is like so bold, even though I knew it was coming. It was a clever move. I guess you were asking before about negatives, and I was struggling to find any. I think maybe because I was too wary of going into spoilers. Mm-hmm. The slightest of negatives, I think you probably know where you're going with this. We're in spoilers now, right? Yeah. You know, this wonderful moment, this really heart-wrenching moment with Peter Parker begging Tony Stark to save him and saying, I don't want to go. And then, like, this horrible, gut-wrenching thing, seeing him, like, he's such a well-cast, lovable character in these films, seeing him literally dissolve into ash and fade away into the sky. And you want to sort of weep for him, and then you think, well, I just read a few months ago that Spider-Man Homecoming is Part 2, or Spider-Man Part 2 is in development. Yeah. We know so much about how movies are made now, that there's no... there's a huge emotional impact in terms of just watching this film, and the way they've handled it does leave you sort of, stunned. But at the back of your mind, if you follow films quite a lot like you and I do, we know that Black Panther has made like $1 billion worldwide, and they've killed Black Panther off, but like, by God, they'll be bringing him back, because like, he's the cash cow right now.
But like, I think that's a very kind of, cynical, smarty pants. I'm not saying you are this, but like, the people who write off the ending as being like, oh well, those even matter.
Yeah, I've read a lot of
nothing
people
matters,
say,
it's a movie.
Yeah, I've read
but
people
like,
say it's lazy, and I don't agree with that. I think just if you're looking for a negative, it maybe loses a little bit of impact because you know how things are made. But to me, it still was handled so well to not really make me think too much about that.
And the point isn't that you, the audience, are sad because Spider-Man appears to have died. The point is Tony Stark has just watched this happen, and he feels responsible for it, and all the other characters, they don't know there's going to be a sequel. No. When Captain America sits down at the end and says, oh God, as he looks around and just chaos.
He doesn't know that Black Panther 2 is in development.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an emotional character moment. Like, it's so fulfilling in that regard. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here, looking at, like you could make the argument that there's a sort of lack of emotional resonance just because of that. But really, scraping the bottom of the barrel, I was, like, properly moved by the ending.
Like, a death in a fictional thing shouldn't be used as a kind of a cheap pull the rug out from underneath you.
No.
Just to shock you. It should be used to further some sort of character growth. You know,
Agreed.
it affects the characters in the movie, and so that's what you're going to get invested in.
Yeah, I mean, another thing to say is, like, you were talking about these characters dying. There's so many little misdirects and little hints that we're not quite getting the whole picture, particularly with the Doctor Strange story.
Yeah, I want to get into that in just a wee second. But, like, with regards to that ending and how it all came about, like,
Sure.
Thanos is telling you the whole time that he's going to get all the stones, he's going to snap his fingers, and he's going to wipe out half the universe. And so you know that is a possibility.
Yeah, but we never believe that it's
Yeah.
going to come to that because we've seen these films and we know that these characters, there's always that, I think they play on that idea that you go, oh, well, like, James Bond's going to be fine at the end, or, oh, Spider-Man's going to be fine at the end, because I suppose, going back to the point I was making before, they're probably playing off that audience expectation that, oh, well, they're not going to kill so-and-so because such and such is happening. They're going, well, we'll do what we want. We'll kill them off.
Yeah.
Like,
And there was a few points where I thought they weren't going to, like, fully capitalize on it, like,
you mean, up until what point? Like, when
Like-
did you think that?
so when, I'm trying to think of the order in which he gets the stones.
Okay, I think he starts with the Power Stone, the purple one, that happens off camera.
Yeah, so
In the
it
Tesseract.
ends up with him, coming to Wakanda. That's what it is. He comes to Wakanda, and
Okay, he's already got 5
so
at that point, yeah.
the last one is Vision's Mind Stone, and Scarlet Witch successfully removes her from his head and destroys it.
It's a really
And-
nice moment
yeah.
as well.
And you think, okay, our heroes have saved the day. And he says, and at that point I was thinking, if they are smart, they will do what I think they should do and use the time stone to reverse time, because obviously that's what
He's just got
that's
that.
what I would do if I was a villain. And then
Sure.
that's exactly what he did do. It's like, okay, good, they're not idiots. But then, just as he gets it, like, he puts it in his glove and he has all of them for the first time. And
And
I was like, I didn't even know they would get to this point of him actually having them all.
Sure.
'Cause now it's over. And then Thor comes out from the sky with this massive axe.
Yeah,
And
Stormbreaker.
he plunges it into his chest. And I was like, alright, okay, so they had their cake and they're eating it too. He did get all the stones, but now Thor saved the day. And then he says, you should have aimed for the head. And he clicks his fingers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they
Wow.
actually did it.
Yeah, I thought it was that was one of my favourite moments of the film. It was, again, really heartbreaking moment towards the end when Vision has that really satisfying death moment where he's sacrificing himself by being killed by the woman he loves because it's the only way to destroy the stone.
Yeah.
So it's like, he even says at the end, like, you could never hurt me, knowing that she's the only one that's got the power to kill him and to destroy the stone. Or, destroy the stone, and therefore he will die as a result. So he's got that really emotionally satisfying death for his character.
Yeah.
And then the real coldness of the villain comes out there, where he uses the time mechanic of that stone to reverse the death, rip it out of his head, and just chuck him to the side with no mercy, with no pity.
No ceremony, no.
No.
Yeah.
And it's like, and she screams. It's a really, like, pretty, I mean, you're talking about these films as well. Like, if I was a kid watching that, man, I'd have so many questions. Pretty, like, hard stuff for kids as well.
Yeah. A friend of mine who works in the cinema has said that he's very much enjoyed seeing people coming out and seeing their reactions. And he said one kid came out and he said, Thanos better fix that in the next movie. As if, like,
Yeah.
Thanos is going to be like, okay, sorry.
Well, this is another thing that came to mind about Empire Strikes Back. I remember reading and hearing about when that movie was released, and you have the big reveal about Darth Vader, being Luke's father, and so many kids were like traumatized by it, or the main reaction from a lot of kids was, nah, he's lying.
Yeah. Do you know, in fact, that's why they had in Jedi, Yoda confirm it? 'Cause
Confirm
it's
it, yeah.
Kids will believe Yoda if he says
Because
it.
Lucas was told that, like, a lot of kids will just say, oh, he's lying,
Yeah.
because, like, they don't believe the baddie can possibly be the goodie's dad.
Yeah.
So it's like, a lot of kids, man, will probably be coming out of this going like, no, he can't have killed Spider-Man, or he can't. And in a way, they're right, because they can't have killed Spider-Man.
Yeah.
There's gonna be something else to this. You saw the way that Doctor Strange looked at that time stone before he handed it over.
That's the most interesting thing for me about the way this ending goes. And
You mean the way that Doctor Strange has already seen, like, millions of alternate futures, and it was a really kind of clever, it was an unexpected way for them to handle that. I really liked it.
so he looks ahead into the future and he sees like 14 million scenarios of how this can play out. And
In
Tony,
which they only win one.
Tony says, how many did win? He says one. And then Doctor Strange kind of sits out for the rest of the the rest of the action section.
Well, he's constantly you mean when they're fighting on Titan? He's helping.
But once they get Thanos pinned down and they're trying to take the glove off him, and that whole thing with Quill happens where Quill fucks it up.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange doesn't get involved.
I thought he was holding him down with something. I thought he was using some binds.
It's
just Mantis on his head.
Oh, maybe he does hold him down.
I think he's maybe got something tied around him to just kind of hold him.
Well, regardless,
okay.
He knows what Peter Quill's going to do, and he doesn't stop him. And he says to Tony, "It was the only way. We're in the end game now."
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing though. You could start to tear apart any time travel movie, and the logic would disappear in a moment. But then you don't have the film. But you look at Doctor Strange saying that, and he's like, he must be aware that the scenario they're going to win in, or the only way they could possibly win, requires all this shit to happen first. So
and that's really
he's
heroic.
Going to die.
Yeah,
he knows that
the
young Peter Parker is going to die. He knows that half the fucking universe is going to cease to exist. But that's the only way, because he's seen something that's given him the hint that they're going to win. Yeah. So I agree, it was a really cool kind of plot device to use that sort of, him traveling into the future in his mind to see all that stuff.
And what's, I'm sure is no coincidence, the remaining ones are the original Avengers, Cap, Iron Man, Hulk, Widow, and I guess Hawkeye, who you don't see.
We don't know. I mean,
War Machine.
There's a Hawkeye, I think, will probably be in the Ant-Man movie that's coming out, because they make reference to
I didn't
the
even
fact.
think of that, yeah.
They make reference to the fact in the movie that Scott and, what's Hawkeye's name?
Clint.
Scott and Clint, made a deal to get out of prison. That was the prison they were in at the end of Civil War. So they've chosen a different life. So I imagine that maybe Clint is helping out Scott now. But,
just a few quick things.
Okay.
The part where Thor first comes back to Wakanda, and he has the axe, and he steps through the portal. I get chills every time I watch it.
Sensational.
It's so good.
Such a good, because he's been away from everyone for such a large part of the movie. We start the movie with Thor. We have, Loki's death, Heimdall's death.
I haven't even talked about that yet.
I mean, there's so much to talk about that, we could probably go on for hours, but we have these pretty big moments with Thor at the start. A lot of stuff happens off screen in between the ending of Ragnarok and the start of this. He's apparently wiped out half the crew. What's happened to the other half? But having Thor then go in this kind of sort of quirky adventure with Rabbit and Tree, which is what he calls Rocket and Groot, to the smelting mines of Peter Dinklage as a giant.
Whoever told him to do that accent.
Very unusual.
Terrible.
It's such a strange kind of disconnected little story, but it has this lovely payoff when he does burst through at Wakanda at that kind of moment where it's I suppose it's the sort of typical moment during the battle where all hope seems to be lost. They're all getting crowded out by these vicious monsters that the enemy have sort of put onto them. It's an awesome sort of way to come back into the action. I loved it, man.
And because Thor has been so kind of underused in the previous two Avengers movies as well, I don't think he was anyone's favourite, but this new post-Ragnarok Thor,
sure,
he's so fantastic.
Yeah, they even make a little joke with Captain America where he says, new haircut, and he says, "I see you've copied my beard."
Yeah. And that as well, how when he first comes back to Wakanda and everyone looks at him and they have this moment of we're saved.
Yeah,
Thor is here.
Yeah, our demigod is back.
Yeah. And he just jumps up and he's lightning's flying out of him and he's like,
And we've seen him at his lowest point in this film. He's about to have his head crushed at the start of the movie. His brother or his best friend is murdered. His brother is murdered. That
scene where he's talking to Rocket and he's like, so...
That's a very Guardians-esque scene, I felt.
But then the way Thor delivers it where he's kind of like you said, he's at his lowest and he's trying to be the grief and they're all great motivators. I'm going to do it. He's trying to fight through, but you can tell he is in a bad way.
Yeah. The performance there is really good because he's trying to kind of cover it with a little jaunty sort of Marvel type humor. Yeah. And you can see the emotion breaking through. The way that Rocket was handled in that scene was really cool as well, trying to, time to be the captain. Mm.
A little bit of growth for Rocket as well.
Yeah, and also the little, do you remember Quill saying to him, I know you're only going with Thor because it's where Thanos isn't. Yeah. It's
that to me felt like a James Gunn thing to throw in there and be like, we have to make it clear
that Rocket is scared.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Quill knows he's scared and these people know each other very well and stuff, yeah.
Sure. Speaking of, the Guardians, do you want to get into the big Guardian death, or
Yeah. Gamora is thrown off a cliff to her death. And
in another emotionally resonant
Yeah.
and satisfying scene.
This ties into something I wanted to talk about here.
Okay.
In fact, a few things. Red Skull, that was weird.
It was weird, but it was fine.
Yeah.
I thought he looked great.
Yeah. Not Hugo Weaving.
No, I thought it was actually when I was watching, and then he didn't come up in the credits. Somebody else.
But anyway, so previously I had said that the Doctor Strange looking at the future was one of the most interesting parts of it. This is the second most interesting part.
Okay.
Everything revolving around the Soul Stone for me is kind of fascinating because we don't actually know what it does. It's the last one you find. You don't know why it is where it is. You have to go through a strange ritual to get it.
The strange ritual being you have to sacrifice something or sort of thing, someone you love, yeah.
And then after
a soul for a soul.
Yeah, after Thanos throws Gamora off the cliff, we get a flash wipe, and then the mountain they're standing on is gone. He's lying in a puddle and he has it in his hand.
Yeah, I never thought of that. We don't really see how he gets there.
Yeah, it's very strange. And then later on, after Thanos clicks his fingers, wipes out half the people, we get a kind of a vision scene, not the character vision, a scene within like a kind of
it's a sort of
imagined reality.
Yeah, it's almost like a dream sequence. Yeah.
Where Thanos sees a young version of Gamora and she says, "Did you do it? What did it cost?" And he says, "Cost everything."
It's a really nice moment. What did it cost? His only response is everything.
Yeah.
Really well. Again, the performance is so good.
So just everything around that, like I don't think Gamora, like a lot of people were saying that any of the deaths that weren't caused by Thanos clicking his fingers,
they'll be final.
They'll be final. I really hope not for Gamora because like, we know there's going to be a third Guardians, and I would like her to be in it.
Well, we know that James Gunn was heavily consulted, so he'll know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going to see this movie and then getting surprised by that. Like, that would be horrible. No, I think there's probably an argument to be made if you're sacrificing a soul for a soul, that she's like alive inside the Soul Stone or something.
Yeah, that's the theory that I heard. Yeah, that she is the power within the Soul Stone.
Like, she is the stone.
Yeah.
It could be a really interesting way to reverse things or to make things go back.
Yeah, like I think that's going to play a big part into it. That like, I know I joked earlier about Thanos changing his mind, but that's actually not an impossible thing to imagine. Like that he is like plagued by grief and like guilt over what he did because
it seems
the
like
stone is Gamora.
Could be difficult to change his mind because the gauntlet is destroyed when he snaps his fingers. Are the stones destroyed?
Yeah, the gauntlet is in a bad way, but he immediately uses it
to teleport.
That's
a good point.
They must work.
But another thing you were talking about there about what does the Soul Stone do? Hear me out here. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I have.
Right, so it looks like they're going to be going into this quantum realm stuff a little more. Any chance you think that that'll tie into the way our heroes are all disappearing into ash? That there's going to be some kind of, maybe they're just going to like the quantum realm. Maybe it's like something that Doctor Strange has cast a spell on the time stone so that actually when Thanos clicks his fingers, they're not going to die, but they're just going to go to another dimension where they'll be trapped until somebody can save them. Like a kind of stopgap.
Who knows? I mean, I think that the Ant-Man and the quantum realm will play into the
larger movie. Mythology of the whole thing.
Because that all seems like pretty important stuff.
Yeah.
But who knows at this point. I hope Gamora comes back.
Yeah, I like her a lot as a character. I thought she was really cool in this. I loved the sequences with her as a little girl as well. I thought that kind of fleshed out both Thanos and her quite a good amount.
So the post-credit scene hinted at Captain Marvel.
Right, yeah.
Who, the next two movies are Ant-Man and the Wasp, then Captain Marvel, then this final Avengers movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much telling us that Captain Marvel is going to play a very big role going forward. I'm looking forward to that quite a bit, because
absolutely.
I love the actress, I love Brie Larson. So.
And from what I know of Captain Marvel, she's a cool character. I like all the cosmic stuff.
Sure.
I like Brie Larson. This all sounds good.
I don't know a lot about the character, apart from, like, I've heard people describe her as a sort of Superman type character in that universe.
She is,
overpowered kind of character, perhaps, but certainly looking at what's just happened in this film, you kind of need somebody of that cosmic power to sort of bring things back into balance, I guess.
What's cool about that is that she is a human from Earth.
Okay.
Who gets this power and then leaves and becomes this almighty cosmic entity.
Okay.
So she has a foot in both worlds. Mm-hmm. She's can relate to Captain America. She can relate to Peter Quill. Like, not Peter Quill is a bad example because he's also human. But sure,
but she can relate to
Thor.
Thanos.
Yeah.
Or Thor. Sure, I get you.
And I think this is a good way to make people excited for this movie.
Yeah.
To say that, you know, you need to come back for Avengers and she's going to save the day. So check out her movie to see how
which I think is going to be set at a different time period.
It's
We're
in the
talking
90s,
about,
yeah.
and
Which is why Sam Jackson has a funky beeper.
That's right. That's right. I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
But certainly I mean, it's setting things up for her character, and I don't think people maybe were, you know, was there a huge buzz around Captain Marvel maybe before? I think this is certainly going to help it. Put it that way.
Only because it's the first Marvel female-led movie.
Sure.
But also Oscar-winning actress.
No, I mean,
you know?
I was looking forward to, you know, just for those kind of, filmic reasons, but, you know, in terms of like a Marvel character, we're back to this kind of, didn't think Captain Marvel was a particularly popular character, but we've been...
I think in recent years she definitely has, like Civil War 2 wasn't, the comic run, wasn't terribly well received, but she was at the centre of it. It was her and Tony Stark.
Okay. And certainly the Guardians of the Galaxy, I've been led to believe, were not a particularly popular comic run, but have become hugely popular as a result of the films. But I'll be looking forward to seeing how they kind of put the lot together.
Absolutely.
Do you want to go back to what you were saying about the four kind of original, or just the original group of Avengers being the last people standing?
Yeah. So
how do you think that's going to play into part two? Because I just really quickly think that it's going to instantly make part two more of an intimate, possibly sort of a more intimate sort of film.
Yeah, and especially because none of them, apart from Thor, are kind of universe spanning. Like, I think a lot of it might take place, if not just on Earth, but like possibly within different realities, different time periods, you know?
Yeah.
But have it more like, one thing that was cool with this movie, the last we saw Tony and Cap, they were on bad terms, and that wasn't resolved in this movie. They didn't talk to each other, they didn't see each other.
Very close to being resolved until the donut ship came down.
So if in this next one, they have like a really emotional reunion,
yeah,
like that's gonna be, for me, that's gonna be huge.
I could see them having a reunion at the, you know, but it's too late kind of moment where maybe both of them are about to be killed off. I can see the next film being like that kind of original group of four: Thor, Hulk, Cap, Iron Man, sacrificing themselves for the greater good of bringing everyone back somehow.
Yeah, I think I said to you,
and it would be a kind of nice way to sort of bow out those characters if they need to.
Like, a lot of their contracts are coming up. You know, they're getting on in age.
Again, this is us knowing a little bit about, you know, like, you know, people who know stuff about what's going on in the behind the scenes, because so many people do now, just because of the way the information is out there.
Yeah, but so much of like Tony's arc has been he wants to do better for the world, but he himself brings on so much trouble to the world, and his kind of guilt over that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, him just by being Iron Man and starting this whole superhero thing, maybe feels guilty that he put Earth on the map, and Thanos knows him by name, and he feels guilty that this is what brought him here.
Yeah.
And Captain America, his whole thing is, you know, he has to do the right thing.
Yeah, he doesn't
no
like
matter
bullies.
what, no matter what the cost. Yeah, doesn't like bullies. Yeah,
I don't like bullies.
So I think either of them, maybe both of them, it could end with either of them putting on the glove and fixing things, but at the cost of their own life.
Well, yeah, we already saw what one stone did to a half human, half Quill's ancestry, half Kurt Russell, half human.
An Eternal, I think he is.
Right, so he nearly got ripped to shreds by one of them. So
it's not Eternal, now that I think about it. It's not. It's a Celestial. Sorry.
Celestial, okay, but you know, yeah.
Keep your angry comments to yourself.
Yeah, so that, like, I don't know, man. You'd have gotten away with that with me. I wouldn't have had a clue, but certainly, yeah, I think we're going to have a pretty emotional payoff in part two or part four, whatever, you know.
I could sit for another hour and kind of theorise about the next one. But let's not do that.
Suffice to say, I think we would both highly recommend this movie, and I'm pretty sure both of us are probably going to try and catch it at least another time or two at the cinema, right?
3 times is
Is that good enough for you?
Yeah. Like, I'm not insane. Like, I saw it, and then my girlfriend wanted to see it, so I was like, sure, I'll see it a second time.
Okay.
But then she wanted to see it a second time, so I was like, I guess I'm seeing it a third time.
Okay, but that's enough.
No complaints. No complaints.
I'm not much of a rewatcher when it comes to movies, but I think, you know, when it comes to like these big sort of tentpole spectacle movies, I think I went to see The Force Awakens like 6 or 7 times at the cinema. It was kind of more because that was the reason I got my like card for the cinema, like that I just wanted to go and see Star Wars loads, so I thought I'd better make it worth
Same
the
here,
trial.
actually. Yeah, last Jedi, I was like, I need to get one of these cards because the next year
You're
I'm
going
to be watching a lot of movies.
You're going to be hammering that card, yeah. So I think I'll probably try and catch it another time. I would highly recommend checking it out in IMAX if you can. What formats did you see it in?
Just regular ass movie.
2D, 3D,
2D
every time.
every time.
I noticed that Odeon have a thing called iSense. Is that similar to IMAX? Is that...
It's not as big.
But it's the same idea. It's just a bigger screen.
I don't even know if it's IMAX visuals. I think it's maybe just the sound is better. It's a bigger screen.
Oh, really? So it's just a sort of carefully branded bigger screen. Like Cineworld have a thing called Super Screen.
Yeah, I think it's equivalent to that.
Okay, so it's a big screen and better sound technically, but possibly not that much better.
Yeah.
Well, if you get a chance to catch it in IMAX, man, I thought the presentation was stunning.
I bet. Moving on to a little bit of news, still sticking within the kind of Marvel framework.
Marvel?
There was Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer number 2 came out. But the big news for us, which I am unhappy about, is that the film has been delayed by a month in the UK because of the stupid fucking World Cup. No, not all my life, I have been, my life's been made more difficult because I don't like football, and growing up in Glasgow and all my friends like football and the old firm and all that, I hate it. Football's ruined so many aspects of my life, and now they're taking my comic book movies from me.
Listen, Thanos, like, you're gonna have to get a grip here, man. I think it's a ridiculous decision. I don't think the World Cup is stupid. I don't really follow football.
I'll stick by what I said.
Okay, that's fine. I respect your candor. I don't think football's stupid, but I don't think that the World Cup is a particular clash with Ant-Man and the Wasp. There's such a big divide in demographics traditionally between like nerdy comic book people and sport fans. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be a large section of people who will just go and see big movies. Who are maybe not that into other movies, but they'll go to the cinema to see Marvel movies or Star Wars movies, things like that. So maybe Disney are kind of hedging their bets here, thinking like we don't want to like release this right in the middle of a World Cup campaign where England are competing. So it's not like...
That's another thing, just like, we live in Scotland, we're not in the World Cup. Another thing we're always tied to is...
We could get into the independence debate here as well, Alan. I don't know if that's what Disney had intended. I think we kind of touched on this before we were recording. I think they might end up going back on this because there will be a big backlash. We live in an age where if you don't see the movie in the first few days, everyone just anticipates that you're not that interested and they can talk about it openly. Yeah. And I agree with that. I kind of don't really care much for this spoiler culture where everyone's like, oh, you can't talk about the movie in any great detail in case anyone hasn't seen it. And it's like, man, it came out 2 months ago. What gives? So I'm a little concerned at the fact that, after a few days, it'll be pretty difficult to kind of avoid what the hell just happened. But
also, if it wasn't delayed, it would come out around about the same time or very close to The Incredibles 2 UK release date.
Yeah, we're getting that a bit later, aren't we?
I think they don't want to kind of cannibalise their own market share.
You've got Solo coming out in a few weeks here, and I think that will be an interesting one because I wonder if that will be cannibalized by Infinity War still probably doing really well at the box office. But I mean, they are separate companies. I mean, Pixar, Lucasfilm, Marvel, they're separate parts.
They're all heads of the same snake.
No, sure, but let's not forget, they are all sort of run by different people and they've all got their own goals and their own, I'm sure they'll be happy when each does well. Like we saw, did you see the Kathleen Kennedy thing to the Marvel people?
Yeah, there was a lot of that going around.
Sort of handwritten notes congratulating them on getting the biggest. That's another thing we didn't even mention in our Avengers review. The biggest worldwide box office
opening
week. Ridiculous amount. So anyway, I don't know, man. Like I think you got to just choose a time to release a film and go with it, and not worry too much about what you're cannibalizing. I think, but I get why they would. I get the Incredibles 2 clash more than I get the World Cup thing. The World Cup thing seems strange to me. But there's, I don't know. Am I sitting on the fence too much? I can feel the fence like riding up. But like, I get where they're going for, but I'm not particularly happy about it because I want to see the movie at the same time as everyone else. We normally get the movies a day before.
We do. I know. So maybe it's just like a taste of our own medicine.
Well, I think Thor was the first film that they tried that with, and it was the idea was we'll release it like a few days early in the UK and sort of it'll build buzz, so by the time, or in Europe as well, and by the time it comes to the US, there'll be a bit of early buzz for it. I believe that's still the idea, so they're obviously doing something different for this.
Not happy about it though, because I really liked Ant-Man, the first movie. Like,
I liked it a lot.
Big fan.
I'd probably preferred to see what Edgar Wright's version would have looked like, but
Yeah.
you know, I think most people would. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the second one. I thought the trailer was dynamite, really good fun,
And I really like Evangeline Lilly, like from my days of
good old Kate from Lost.
being a Lost fanatic.
I thought Michael Pena really sold me in the first film. I thought he was great, and I think we really need a light-hearted, fun Marvel movie right now.
Yeah, it's funny because the original Ant-Man came out after Age of Ultron, so that was kind of like, you know, the palate cleanser, a nice little fluffy one.
It's a really nice way to put it. Yeah.
And that's what this seems like again after the death and destruction of the last movie.
I imagine it will play into it in some manner. I mean, it can't not. These things all do.
Well, it's set like before it.
Yeah.
So,
but then that doesn't mean that it has to end before it.
That's totally
you know,
true.
It's
Yeah,
set
you're right.
an hour before it.
Yeah. So let's take a wee quick look at what's been going on Netflix or any streaming service. And
Sure.
he's a man of the digital age and likes to keep up on all sort of streaming film and media.
Yeah, like I like to go to the cinema as much as possible, but I mean, there's such an embarrassment of riches when it comes to streaming choices these days. There's been a couple of interesting Netflix movies over the last week. I think they released about 5 or 6 original movies today. So really, you could watch a new movie like every other day on Netflix and never have to pay more than your £8 a month subscription. The quality is certainly variable, but then that's not to say the quality of all the movies playing at your local cinema is not also
That's true.
variable. I'm kind of getting into the whole thing of trying to keep up with what they're releasing. I don't watch as much TV as a lot of people, and I know Netflix's original sort of TV shows. Your Stranger
So when you say
Things.
TV, you mean
I mean, like the syndicated sort of series, or syndicated is maybe the wrong word. A series, like what would traditionally be seen of as a TV show, as opposed to a movie.
not something that's shown on
Not shown on live TV, but you know, I'm talking about Stranger Things. I'm talking about House of Cards.
That's mostly what I use Netflix for.
And Netflix has sort of got a really solid reputation when it comes to that. So they're sort of trying to build their reputation with their movies because they have a sort of quality control issue, I think, where they will just lurk around film festivals and sort of buy what's cheap or buy what no one else is buying. And they have funded some of their own stuff right from the ground up, which Bright was an example of that, which was not a great movie, I didn't think. But it's interesting to see them taking strides to do that. But yeah, we both watched a documentary this week, not together, like it sounds like we sat on the couch and watched it together. But
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But we watched The Rachel Divide, which was a Netflix documentary feature about Rachel Dolezal, who probably everyone's heard of somehow through osmosis in the news about. She was in the NAACP.
The leader of the NAACP for
Of
Spokane,
our
Washington.
local chapter, yeah. And was essentially passing herself off as a member of the African American community when she was in fact like biologically white. And the documentary for me raised so many interesting questions because it wasn't afraid to look at that news story from various angles, and it wasn't afraid to kind of sympathize with Rachel Dolezal, her family background, but also to speak to people who really were vehemently angry about how she conducted herself and how she kind of brought that local chapter of the NAACP into what they saw as real disrepute. And it's so difficult to kind of come to a moral conclusion on the movie. It just opened a real Pandora's box of ethical problems and the sort of very interesting time that we're living in right now. So I wouldn't feel in any way qualified to come down and say, here's, you know, what this movie was trying to say about such and such social issue. I thought it was just a really well made, really well balanced documentary. I thoroughly enjoyed getting like a real sense of the issue, but also feeling like the filmmaker wasn't trying to sort of spoon feed the answer to me.
Yeah. I definitely came away from it with an opinion of her, which was a kind of a more severe opinion than I had before I'd seen the film.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I'll agree with that as well.
But that wasn't because that was the agenda of the documentary.
Was it also perhaps because you didn't really know much about the story going into it?
Yeah,
like...
I knew the broad strokes.
Okay.
But the kind of particulars of her as a person and what she did and what other actual black people's opinions of it were, I wasn't totally versed in. And I mean, obviously I have an opinion. Everyone has an opinion on everything. But as a non-black, non-American, my opinion doesn't matter on it. But So I just don't want to get into a big political discussion right
No,
now.
no, there's
I definitely came away from it thinking she doesn't have a leg to stand on. I don't think.
Sure.
Because it brings up things that, like we were talking before. One thing I was thinking before I saw it was, are they going to talk about the parallels between transgender people and what she calls herself as a transracial person? Yeah. And they do address it, and they don't shy away from that, and it's an interesting discussion. It's an important thing that needs to be talked about.
We're not the people to maybe
Absolutely
have this discussion. It does bring up other, even, you can go deeper down the rabbit hole and you go from transgender and transracial to fluid gender and fluid racial, where these are people who will change from one day to the next or from one week to the next or just completely randomly.
Yeah.
And it does really start to sort of throw up some really interesting questions in our brains, and I don't feel in any way qualified to talk about it in any great depth.
Yeah.
But I would just say the documentary is well worth a watch. It's called The Rachel Divide. Available on Netflix, and I would just say one of the best things about talking about Netflix films, in my opinion, is that you can talk to like anyone about them and they can literally go home or, put the phone down and start watching it right there and then. You talk about Avengers Infinity War to your mum and dad, they're maybe not going to want to go out and buy a cinema ticket to go and see it. You talk about a Netflix documentary or a Netflix film to someone, they can literally just turn it on 5 minutes later and just check it out and see if it's any good. No expense, no travelling to a theatre. So I love both. I love having this sort of all access sort of to the different streaming services. Are you a subscriber to any other streaming services?
I have Netflix and I have Amazon Prime Video.
Sure. They have a real branding problem with that because no one knows whether it's called Amazon Prime Video, or simply just Prime Video.
Yeah. I think at the moment on my Xbox it shows up as Prime Video.
On my devices, it seems to be Prime Video as well, so I think that's what they're going with. However, it seems to change. Yeah. They're messy, but they have a great selection of kind of catalogue movies in particular, older stuff. Whereas Netflix are really starting to focus more on original content, which is really cool. I think it's, brave of them, and there's some really interesting things being made. Another quick shout out to a movie I saw last week there was this little teen romance called Candy Jar, which I stuck on not because I looked at the plot and thought it was something that would resonate with me, just because it was a Netflix original. I was curious. And it was a really unique, interesting little romance about a debate club. And I actually used to be on the debating team in school. So really? It spoke to me in that slight way. But yeah, some really interesting stuff. Have you ever checked out anything like Filmstruck or Mubi or any of these services?
No, I only know about them because you told me about Filmstruck in particular.
Sure. Well, our local art house cinema, GFT, if you have their CineCard yearly membership, they throw in a Mubi year subscription with that now as well. And it's like a little kind of art house online cinema.
Cool.
Well worth checking out for obscure, pretentious French shit.
And just before we finish, you also watched Leon, aka The Professional, for the first time in your life.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
An old favourite of mine.
Which, you were keen to talk about this. I watched it last night. I've been putting it off for ages. I've had it on Blu-ray for yonks, and I just fancied taking a break from streaming stuff and thought I'd better crack through the old backlog of Blu-rays. Thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a favourite of mine.
I think maybe it's because I saw it when I was quite young.
Yeah.
I was like 13, 14 when I saw it, and I was like, this is really cool. Like, he's a hitman, and,
It was really, I can imagine it being real stylish sort of thing to see when you're that young, and it's like not like anything you'd maybe ever seen before. For me, that was like Amélie. When I was 13, I watched Amélie, and this was like me kind of discovering French cinema.
Right.
And that had a real European vibe to it. It's obviously French funded, French director.
Yeah.
So I think if I'd watched it at the age you did, I'd have a different opinion, more of a sort of, maybe a little more positive. I thought it was a great movie. I probably had very high expectations going into it. I think it's really high on the top 250 on IMDb.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I don't have a great deal to say about it. The chemistry between Reno,
Jean Reno,
and Portman was brilliant. But a little bit strange, and
that's what's so good about it though. It's like it's such an unusual relationship that you're like,
it's almost,
I'm not sure if I should even be watching this.
I think it's almost more troubling looking at it through a post-Weinstein era or something, just because there's that slight moment where you think there's almost a little bit of sexual tension between them, but
I think more than almost.
But Renault's character is almost, he's got like
the mind of a child.
Yeah. He's not grown up, and he but then he has the ability to articulate that in the way that an adult would, to tell her that he hasn't grown up, whereas, you know.
It's funny because, like, she's a kid who is, like, thinks she is much older than she is.
And certainly acts like she's much older
and
than she is.
He's a grown man who, like, you know, loves his life like a child.
Best friend is a plant.
Yeah, drinks a lot of milk.
Touch. He drinks a lot of milk.
And then you've got Gary Oldman chewing the scenery.
Yeah. I mean, it's no. I saw him and I thought, there's no way he's going to do a Fifth Element here, which is what he did, I guess, after Leon, was it? Yeah, and same director, and he is brilliant in the Fifth Element. He's so over the top, but he's almost as over the top in Leon, and it's not a sci-fi setting.
Yeah.
It's a weird one, but I thought the film was really good, really strong.
For years they've been talking about a sequel called Matilda with a fully grown Natalie Portman, but it's never materialised.
Okay. I guess Jean Reno would be interested. I don't think is he particularly popular these days? Is he in a lot of stuff?
Did you see the end of the movie? Don't think it matters whether or not he's interested.
Oh jeez, yeah. Cut this part.
So that about wraps it up for this week's first episode. Next week, the big releases are Amy Schumer's I Feel Pretty.
Are you going to go and see that?
My girlfriend, not Amy Schumer.
my girlfriend, Amy Schumer, wants to go and see Amy Schumer movie.
My girlfriend was quite interested in seeing it, so I may end up seeing it. And also, you know, I have, like I said, I have a film card, so it wouldn't cost me anything.
Sure. Only your time and your dignity.
Mary and the Witch's Flower, which I'm not even...
Yeah, this is one of the guys who has founded his own studio from Studio Ghibli.
Oh,
this is his this studio's first film. I think it's called Studio Ponyo? It's not Ponyo, it's something similar.
Sounds like you're trying to say Ponyo.
It's not Ponyo, because I know it's not based on, what's the Ghibli film?
Ponyo?
It is literally just called Ponyo, right? Yeah, the studio's got another name. But it's their first film. It was playing at the Glasgow Film Festival. What's that?
So did you see it already?
I didn't see it. I missed it. I saw like 20 odd films at the film festival, but not that one. So that's out in dubbed version and subtitled version right now.
The Strangers Pray at Night, which you had the glorious pleasure of seeing already.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about next week.
Yeah, sure, we'll talk about it if you want.
Won't take long.
No, just don't go and see it.
And the Tully is the other big release. It's a Jason Reitman movie. Charlize Theron. So the director of Juno and what was the other big thing that Jason Reitman did?
I had a look at his filmography earlier. I cannot.
That kind of Juno-y films, you know the ones.
He's the son of Ivan Reitman. Let's leave it like that. He did a young adult with Charlize Theron. Yeah.
Getting very good reviews. So we'll talk about them next week, and you know whatever breaking news, trailers, Netflix originals happen to come out in that time.
Yep. I think we're both going to be seeing Tully though, so I imagine that will be maybe main discussion.
I don't know if we'll get as much talk about that as we did of Infinity War.
I don't know, man.
But we'll see.
Yeah. If Thanos shows up, then, you know, we might have some more to talk about.
You can contact us at CinematicPod on Twitter. You can email us at cftppod. That's cftppod@gmail.com. I am Super Disco Bacon on both Twitter and Letterboxd. If you're not familiar with Letterboxd, it's a fantastic kind of online film diary / review site where you can log your own viewing experiences and rate and write reviews and stuff.
And it's a very good aid memoir for old fuddy-duddies like me who can't remember the ending to a film they watched last night.
So I am Super Disco Bacon on Twitter and on Letterboxd. You can get in touch with Andrew at the Technogoat on Twitter and simply Technogoat on Letterboxd.
That's right.
Andy sees a lot more films than I do, so if you follow him, you'll have almost daily updates on his cinematic adventures.
Yep.
That's it for our first show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or any you want to tell us how wrong we are about our opinions on things, please get in touch. And
with Alan.
And thanks for listening. Hopefully see you next week.
Thank you.
So funky.